Smart 24, driving business.
However, the transition has been very slow, particularly in
interacted with. We have recently produced the induction cooker and the pressure cooker, which are our electric products. We have recently just completed a tour with government of our new electric manufacturing plant in Nairobi, and I welcome any one of you who is in Nairobi to come and visit our plant. We have the LPG product, which is ready for production and ready for sale, but it has not been released to the market just yet. With that brief introduction, I'd like to respond to the question. I think sub-Saharan Africa is a very special market for improved cook stoves, because as Africans, we know that we have existed and survived on biomass. I was reading last night a story that was being aired in Nairobi about the Ogiek people who are apparently being excommunicated, or they're being forced out of their natural forest habitat to allow for carbon financing. And we all know what that means. But it really speaks to who we are as Africans. We have grown to depend on forest. Our ancestry is built on the land. But now has come the challenge of climate change, which then has shaken our ecosystem, making sub-Saharan Africa a very special area in this kind of space and within this conversation. So what it means is that it's going to take a little bit more effort on our governments and policymakers to make sure that efforts around improved cookware and total transition happens, and in a way that it creates win-win opportunities for both the manufacturers, the policymakers, and the end users. I think critical to this conversation is the policy space, which remains highly unregulated. And I believe that a lot of work needs to be done in Africa to ensure that that regulatory space becomes more predictive or predictable and becomes safe for all users. Not just safe, but transparent. There needs to be more data that is shared. There needs to be more information that is shared, especially to the public. And in the area of carbon financing, we find that there is a lot of opaqueness in terms of the communities that are engaged or are involved, communities that basically have historically been supported by forest land, have no visibility into how carbon financing works. And therefore, there's need for a lot more community awareness so that it becomes a shared interest that is built on shared values, so that the entire system, from government down to the last person at grassroots level, understands why this conversation is a priority right now and how they're able to benefit from carbon financing. I think government can also take a bigger role in ensuring that there is zero rating of improved cook stoves and zero rating of any kind of cookware that basically reduces the use of fuel or reduces cooking time. Zero rating is talking basically about VAT. In Uganda, we know it's at 18%, plus an additional required 6% around, I think it's a withholding tax. Yeah. That's correct. So these two taxes can be zero rated, so that a lot of the improved cookware that organizations or companies such as Burn can become more accessible, they can become cheaper, and therefore they can easily penetrate the communities that we target. The other area that has a lot more to do with government, as well as now getting into the conversation around the public-private partnerships, is around getting everybody connected to the grid, especially in the urban centers. We know that in most sub-Saharan African cities like Nairobi and Kampala, up to 80% of urbanites are already connected to the grid. However, they are not aware that that connection actually enables them to benefit from the perks that come with cooking using electricity. So again, the issue of awareness creation lies there, and also the issue around utilization of that grid. We know that currently around only 40% of the electricity being produced in Uganda is actually being utilized by this urban population. So what is happening to the remaining 60%? Why can't the government become more proactive and ensure that 60% that is outstanding goes towards using electricity for cooking and therefore reducing reliance on biomass? And I think with that, I hope I've answered your question best I can without taking too much time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Caroline. Yeah. A round of applause for her. Yeah, and obviously, our guests, you take questions, and if time allows, after the end of the session, I understand there's no other activity in this room, you can engage any of the panelists for further discussions. Okay, our next question goes to Ms. Ruth Kiwanuka. Did you have some material to share with us?
A lot. One is that tree.
Okay. Do you want to speak about it, or we go straight to our question?
Yes, just briefly.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Joint Energy and Environment Projects was founded 40 years ago. And that tree, if you are sitting so far, it is the other side near Total Energies.
On the screen? Oh, you gave them your work?
Where should it be?
Did you bring some work for?
It is there. The banner. Yes, because it's a lot. Yeah, I think you can see. So the founder members, who were Ugandans, total Ugandans, 40 years ago, came up with those problems. They cited that there are problems which were the same as in many African countries. The way we cook, as she said, biomass, and they wanted to see how that could be improved upon. They looked at the industries, the small industries in the bushes, in the villages. They looked at the charcoal production, and all those were happening in many countries. That is 40 years ago. And then they looked at number 4, if you consider 3, it is the alternatives. And now we are talking at the alternatives. 40 years ago, up to today, we are still suffering terribly. And the last one, they thought of tree planting. That is replacing because of the biomass we are depending on as African countries. Now, according to those people, and according to what we are discussing here, and according to the topic here which says clean energy for all, we should look into that deeply. When we say all, what do we mean? If we say we need electricity everywhere, we have to look at our whole country, the nature of the culture, the nature of our structures. There are houses or structures where you cannot take electricity. So we've got to think of very many alternatives to suit different cultures, different people, different levels and poverty, different levels of poverty, definitely. When we talk about electric pressure cookers, it would be so good. But why does it start with the urban people, especially in Kampala? Why don't we start with the ministries who are in energy and environment? And I'm here to announce that, Sophie, you will be in charge of this to check that the whole Ministry of Energy, all people, they are about 250 plus, should go electric because they are able. All the people in the Ministry of Environment should go electric because they are able. Okay. Then they would walk that talk. So, I mean, when we don't look into such, we are going nowhere.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ruth, for that intro. She needed to emphasize that point. That's why we gave her that 1 minute. But I think if I check around the house, for the assignment you've just given me, I believe we are using electricity in our homes, but I mean, we can't take it for granted. And the message is clear. Thank you. So we'll ask you one question. In a recent report, it was a press report, there was an indication that the government of Uganda spends millions, if not billions, of dollars on firewood for refugee camps alone. In your opinion, how can CBOs, CSOs, NGOs, and various development partners incorporate their support to the masses that are the highest consumers of the wasteful cooking methods like firewood and charcoal to promote the transition to clean cooking or clean energy?
Yes, with the refugee settlements, it's really bad, but we are already there. And our objective there is to make sure that we create awareness to these people to enable them understand why we move from the wastage of wood in the open fireplaces to a better stove. Definitely with the refugee settlements, they can't get electricity as the nature of their settlements, but they can use improved stoves where they can use very little firewood. And where we have trained people constructing those stoves which are energy saving, they are using 2 or 3 pieces in a stove and they can cook the same as they used to cook in the past on the open fire. So they need a lot of technologies starting from where they are, like those energy saving stoves which are made of mud. The mud is clay. It is acceptable, it is culturally acceptable, it is affordable, and anyone, whether has been to school or not, whether you're a man or woman or girl, whatever, you can learn how to use it. And later, we can move on slowly to other energy-saving technologies. Otherwise, it is hard to supply electricity over there, though in some places it could work. But what the innovations we are putting there, we are training them to do, are kind of helping, although the number increases every day.
Okay, thank you. But in your opinion, for all the development partners that have not reached out in those masses, what advice would you give them to reach out and make sure that the technology is adopted?
I think together with the government, we should really, because NGOs, as it says, non-government organizations, sometimes it is misunderstood, but now it is high time we work together with the government. When we talk about the technologies which are affordable and easy to use, we should work together to see that these people can be provided with them. But the most important is to create awareness. Unfortunately, the refugees, most of them are coming from neighboring countries. And these many people who have really learned the technologies and made so many are really doing a good job. Another issue that has helped us is that the project we are carrying out over there is funded by the European Union, and within there is a component of cash for work. It has helped a lot because when these people are given cash for whatever they construct, it energizes them, they get more interest, they make so many, and they talk to other people very well. But other projects which have worked without cash for work, really the pace is so low. So I think the government should put that in action together with the funding organizations, that all the people trying to put these technologies in place and use them to reduce on the carbon emissions and other problems, there should be cash given to them. Otherwise, it would be so hard to move a step without cash.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for Ms. Ruth, please. All right. Our next question is to Madam Zainabu. And it says, what are some of the main obstacles to a sustainable charcoal value chain in Uganda?
Thank you, Sophie, and thanks to all the people present here. We're glad to share with you our experiences. I'll probably first give a brief background of how I developed interest in studying about the charcoal value chain particularly. I have been to many discussions and conversations around promoting clean cooking, and in most cases I found that what is being discussed is more on promoting efficient technologies for clean cooking, where we're talking about improved cook stoves. So there's so many projects around that have actually been promoting efficient cook stoves for a while. But then I thought to myself, what are these cook stoves using as a fuel? And then the obvious answer is all these efficient clean cook stoves that we are promoting are actually using charcoal. But are we talking about the efficiency or the sustainability of the fuel that we're talking about? I know that when we are having conversations about transitions, we all aspiring to having everyone transition to using cleaner cooking technologies. Yeah. But we know the challenges that are involved. I think the other panelists have already in a way talked about them. We have issues of affordability. All of us will not transition at the same time. There will be people who will go fast, but then there are others. I mean, that's why I think it's called a transition. It's going to be quite a slow process. But when we look at what is happening in the forest, how this charcoal is being produced, to use the efficient cook stoves that we are promoting, I think by that time, by 2040, when we are all transitioned, then we will be in a desert. So how are we managing the transition process? How are we going to get to 2040 without destroying the current environment, without leaving behind a wasted environment? So I started interesting myself in the topic of sustainably producing charcoal as a transition within the clean energy transition period. Then, I mean, if you will allow me, I'll give you some small statistics really about the charcoal value chain. One, we have 65% of Uganda's population relying on charcoal as their primary source of energy for cooking. So 65%. So it's definitely going to take us some time to bring this figure down. With all that effort, by 2040, maybe by the time we get to 0%, if we don't do anything about the current use of charcoal, then we will probably be a desert. The other is the social aspects around charcoal. 20,000 people employed in the charcoal value chain, from burning to selling, retailing, the mothers in the market. So we're talking about 20,000 jobs within that value chain. When we come to the NDCs and the climate impact, I think the national emissions estimate that emissions from the charcoal value chain account for 7% of the national emissions. Through the production process, the deforestation, it's one of the big contributors towards the emissions. And then the same studies actually say if nothing is done in managing the charcoal value chain, this percentage will increase actually to around 30% by 2030. So we can see it's actually one of the time bombs that we're sitting on as a country, because it's a reality that charcoal is going to be a main source of fuel, particularly for the urban population, which means we need to do something really in the transition process. So we need to look at how can we improve in the short to medium term the way charcoal is produced, because I think now the message of cook stoves is almost already, of efficient cook stoves, is a message that we have managed to put forward. Now, can we now start thinking about the message of the fuel? Can we start promoting, for example, woodlots, particularly for energy production? Because we're not going to pull the charcoal producers, say, out of their business tomorrow, but can they stop going, say, to the forest, but maybe have farmed charcoal? Plant trees on their farm if you want to produce charcoal. There are more efficient technologies that release less emissions. Can we, I know, for example, countries like Namibia, they have such clean charcoal value chain that they actually export this charcoal to Europe. So can we borrow some of those good practices as part of our transition journey, so that when we transition, we are not leaving behind, a desert for ourselves. So just to wrap it up, we need to look at basically sustainability of production. Can we look at possibilities of farmed charcoal? Can we look at improving technologies for producing charcoal? But also, most importantly, maybe what I would like to speak to is also in terms of the regulation of the charcoal value chain. It's a very informal sector, and yet a very, very, robust business where government is losing a lot of revenue, but just because everybody is trying to ignore it, nobody wants to talk about it, government is losing revenue. So I think in our conversations, let's not shy talking about it, because otherwise I think we may look at transitioning, and by the time we have transitioned, we have left behind a desert.
Wow.
Yeah.
A round of applause for her, please. One thing I really appreciate about your response is that being realistic. Many people are speaking about charcoal was banned in Uganda, but guess what? It is all over. It's still in our houses, it's still in the open market, especially here in Uganda. I don't know about other countries. So the transition process, I think, is such a very important thing to think about. And thank you for being realistic, Zainab. Yeah. Okay, our next question, as we almost conclude, we'll come to Catherine. Catherine, why should we concern ourselves with improving sustainability of charcoal, of the charcoal value chain, just as alluded by Madam Zainab?
Thank you so much. Thanks for this opportunity. I'm sorry I came in late. I got lost. The whole day I've been down thinking that was the place where I was supposed to be. And incidentally, I just discovered I was in a wrong place at a very late. Catherine, I work for Kijani Forestry. Kijani Forestry is a private enterprise that is working all over northern Uganda, West Nile, Karamoja sub-region, Bunyoro sub-region, Lango and Acholi. And what we are doing is exactly what Zainabu has just been talking about. We are planting trees with the local community in order to be able to sustain the charcoal and timber production. Why? Because we feel there is a lot of deforestation that is happening due to climate-induced poverty. We cannot shy away from the fact that there is a lot of climate-induced poverty, and what this ends up into forcing the farmers who would have been relying on crops to move to charcoal production as a means of survival. So in that case, this is already showing us that charcoal production is a very good and easy way of making money for farmers. However, currently, they are doing it at the cost of the environment, at the cost of everything. So what do? This is when we think of options like, let's go charcoal farming, let's go timber farming. The biggest worry here is the fact that people think that trees take long to grow. That's the biggest mindset issue that we have. But trees for charcoal can be as fast as 5 years. And in these 5 years that we are talking about, the farmer can be given different options. How Kijani is doing it with FAO is a bit different, that we are encouraging indigenous tree species to be planted. Why indigenous? Because they have a lot of advantages to the soils. They are naturally growing there. They are not destroying the soils. They are doing so well together with the crops. The farmer doesn't have to put a separate plantation for trees and another. He does it all together. When the trees are grown enough, he can now bring in the animals. So he can also do beekeeping, which is more of agroforestry friendly, and we have a value chain in that for the farmer at the end of the day. So why should we engage in this? Yeah. Okay. If we chose to go for clean energy stuff and we are like, okay, and we forget about the farming of the charcoal, just like Zainabu said, where is the charcoal for the clean stoves and the likes coming from? We need to emphasize the tree growing. And you'll ask me a question. For ages, people have been planting trees, but where are the trees? The question is to me, or to us as Kijani, we feel the question is about the approach. The approach that has been used for planting trees, we feel it is not the right approach. The right approach now comes in by, someone talked about incentivizing. I think it was Madam Chwanka. She talked about incentivizing the farmers to do this also. And here we are, like, can we make the farmers own these projects? I've been watching something to Total is planting trees, but I've been watching and people they start even calling the trees the name of the company that gave them the trees. Yeah, you say, they start calling them, these are Kijani trees, these are, they are doing it because it is not their project. We need to change the approach of bringing in the tree growing business and look at it as a business and show the farmers how beneficial it can be to him, and then we shall see them moving away from the naturally growing trees, and then they are now focusing on this as the business. Most of the times when I'm talking to the farmers, I always tell them, I'm like, the same way you are targeting money from the crops, from the sim should be the same way you now look at how much, what is the quality of my trees, how much charcoal am I getting. Then another thing, if we are to look at the others, how about the effects of climate change that we have at the moment? How are we going to manage them without planting trees? We really need to plant these trees. But the farmers, we've already seen it, they are not planting trees because of the mindset. The trees take long, the trees are not making me money. Let's try to show them how and make sure that the trees they are planting are the right trees for them to make money out of it. And then when you look at the sustainable goals, you find that when you look at the sustainable goals, almost 10 of them can be addressed by tree growing. And one of them is number 1, which is end poverty, something like that. What happens? If you're to do that, this is an income coming in for the farmer, and let's say the way Kijani looks at it is by growing trees that grow back. If Catherine is a farmer doing charcoal growing, she is going to grow trees that grow back. When 5 years come, she'll cut down these trees and naturally they will grow, and she's going to manage these regrowth in what we call FMNR, farmer managed natural regeneration, and then they are growing back, and the growing back now comes in many, and the management comes in. If it is for charcoal, we tell him, okay, leave 3 to manage. If in an acre this farmer planted 1,000 trees, originally, that very acre after the first harvest, the farmer is going to have 3,000 trees in that very acre, meaning more income is coming in for this farmer, and then the problem is solved. Then you'll still ask me that what happens when the trees are cut down. The approach Kijani is using and that we feel is working is the farmer should not plant all the acreage he has at the same time. Can we have a sequential planting? Can the farmer plant this year, next year, and the likes for 5 years? If the farmer has 3 acres of land to plant trees, let him not plant all the 3 acres. Let him divide that plot or that piece of land into 5 pieces, such that every year he will have a harvest coming in and he has an income coming in, which comes in to cater for SDG number 2, which is end hunger. So you find that this ends up solving most of our problems. You find that another SDG is about deforestation, which is already catered for. If the farmer is planting trees in sequence, you find that there is no single day his garden is going to be without trees, because he has catered. The 4 plots are growing, he has this year cut down this one. The other plots are growing, and the process continues, so we have sorted that. And we have started doing this as a company, supported by different organizations, and I'm happy to announce that FAO is one of the people that are supporting us into this. And even of recent, we are moving to Yumbe in the BDBD camp under restoration, and we are hopefully going to do this because we are signing an agreement with FAO to make sure we do restoration in those areas. And we are not, I think like Zainabu said, let's not shy away from the fact. The reality is, the moment you tell farmers you are growing trees to protect the environment, they are not going to do it. You have to bring in a reasonable reason, because farmers, people want money. People want to survive. You cannot tell me to think about the climate. They are now thinking about it because of the reverse that is coming. But still, as they will think about the reverse when it has rained and they are flooding. The moment it is gone, they'll go back and cut because they need food. They need school fees for their children. You cannot tell me that the farmer leaves the tree they are growing for cases of, say, carbon, and then you let him not cut it down, and yet the child is sick in the hospital. He will have to cut it down because he has to pay fees for, pay medical bills. So we need to just be realistic and look at that. Then the other one is, like I think, I don't know, one speaker talked about it and it was about carbon, and I looked at it as incentivizing. So if we incentivize these farmers, someone has planted trees right from growth. What Kijani is currently doing, much as we don't have access to carbon credit money, but we are giving our farmers an incentive in a sense that you plant trees this year, next year in January after our tracking, we give you 100 shillings for every tree that is surviving. In this room, 100 shillings for every tree is very small. But back in the area where I work from, 100 shillings for every tree in an acre where a farmer planted for charcoal, that is 100,000. We have homes that cannot even have 100,000 in 3 or 6 months. So such a farmer is helped. If he has to, let's say, weed twice in a year in this plantation, he does it at 100 each time he weeds. That means Kijani has helped him to weed one season. The next season he'll find alternatives. So which helps us to have the survivors. And like I was saying, the biggest reason trees have been planted, but at what quantities and at what is the quality? What is the follow-up that we are doing to make sure that these trees are growing?
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you. I know you have a lot to share with us, but we are not doing so well on time.
It's okay.
But I just wanted to ask you, in 1 minute, have you thought of the alternative clean cooking solutions to the people planting the trees?
Yeah.
In 1 minute, please.
Kijani Forestry is encouraging and has started working on what we call a Casamansi kiln. A Casamansi kiln, still I would say through FAO, all thanks go to FAO. Casamansi kiln is one of the most efficient charcoal production methods. When you compare it, it is unimproved from the local method to the next step, and you find that it saves 20 to 50% of the charcoal, because when you look at the way it produces the charcoal, in the local method there is a lot of wastage because people do the carbonization when the trees are wet, are very dry. Are very wet. They have a lot of moisture, meaning the tree first has to get, the water has to first get drained, which creates a lot of emissions in the environment. It leads to a lot of wastage because when it is drying by fire, the outer part is the first to dry, and when the outer part dries, it now becomes ash. So you find that out of the local method burning, 50% of the tree turns into dust, and then you have just 50%. So here we are saying, for now, the method we have is Casamansi kiln that the farmers that are planting with us trees are going to use in the charcoal production as of now. We are also partnering with some people who are doing briquettes, and they are the ones that are going to be using now the ash. Whereas we are also using FAO to help us on the, we call it biochar, that ash and mixture that comes out. So we are also partnering with FAO to see, because this biochar is very good in providing nutrients to the soils. So we are trying to find ways of making alternatives where people's soils can become fertile, because we know the moment the soils are fertile, there is no way the farmer could engage so much in charcoal production. They will now have alternatives to go back to agriculture.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A round of applause for her as well. I wish we had more time for you, Catherine. I'm sure you have a lot of things to share, just like every other panelist. But we have to almost end, and we'll finish with Rebecca. Rebecca, in your experience, what could be the most successful, innovative business model in use today? you can give us a model that has contributed to the slight shift to clean cooking that you know of.
All right, thank you so much. I know that probably time is not on our end, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. And I will also request to be allowed to say briefly about International Lifeline Fund. So basically, International Lifeline Fund began its work here in Uganda in 2006, and it had mainly two programs, that is WASH and environment. And in WASH, Lifeline has been doing drillings of boreholes, rehabilitations, operation and maintenance. But in environment, and the reason as to why we are here, we mainly do production and distribution of fuel-efficient technologies. Lifeline initially began its operation in northern Uganda during the LRA war that was happening in the areas of Lango and Acholi. So basically, we started with a cook stove that had a local name called Okelokuch. It's a Luo name that literally means a peace bringer, and it was named by the community because of how the stove was actually working wonders for them. So basically, in the beginning, Lifeline was entirely humanitarian, but then slowly we also transitioned into the market-based approach of distribution of the clean cook stoves. We basically produce and distribute 3 types of cook stoves, 2 of which are for households, and the other is for the institutions. So I would say our biggest focus and coverage has been in the northern and eastern regions of Uganda. So basically we are the sharks in that area. So if I'm to go to the question that you asked, in the experience of Lifeline and myself over the years in the clean cooking sector, one thing for sure that has worked, I know there are lots of models that are being used all over Uganda and maybe Africa at large, but one thing that we have realized that has worked for Lifeline is leveraging social marketing. So when I talk about social marketing, ideally I am talking about the fact that you use the community to bring the products to that same community. So basically what we have done as Lifeline, we have a local manufacturing plant that is based in Lira, and all the materials that we use for production of these cook stoves are locally available, and also the labor that we use for this production is local. So this, in a way, increases on the ownership. And any cook stove project, in my opinion, is only successful when it's being adopted, when this technology is being adopted. You can come up with the most efficient cook stove in the terms of thermal efficiency, but when it's not being adopted by communities, then basically you haven't done as much work. So we as Lifeline did the research and development or designing of these cook stoves together with the communities. For example, if you looked at the handles of the cook stoves that Lifeline makes, it was developed after probably measuring 200 hands of women locally in northern Uganda to have an average of what it would look like, a handle would look like for a cook stove. And then basically another model that we have flourished with is training. Training user trainings of these cook stoves. It's just natural. If you're given a technology that you haven't used before, you basically will not know how to use it. So it's very crucial that when you're training these individuals, you're able to also show them, give them a demonstration of how these cook stoves actually work. So our trainings also have demand triggering kind of activities, which is the cook stove demonstrations and competitions against the traditional cooking methods. Basically, we have seen this work for us in the very hard to reach and neglected, I would say, markets. The rural markets are mostly neglected by players because of cost-related issues. So this is where we have flourished as Lifeline. The other business model that I think works not for only Lifeline, but also for Africa in general, is involving the private sector in the distribution of the cook stoves. This private sector, unlike NGOs, are here to stay, as long as the market is making financial sense for them. So basically, if this private sector is supported by the development partners in a sense of de-risking their distribution activities and also allowing them, giving them access to hard-to-reach markets. For example, my colleagues have been talking about the refugee markets. These are markets as well, but they're just not open to the private sector. But if the development partners can work together with the private sectors and they're able to access such markets, the very rural markets, for example, have been neglected as well because the traditional cooking method in these areas are seen to be almost, in the layman sense, free. The 3-stone fire, all you have to do is pick 3 stones and you're able to cook. So you going in there with a cook stove and you're trying to sell it, it becomes very hard. But when you have, for example, a de-risking mechanism from a development partner, one thing that sells the improved cook stoves is the benefits that the cook stove itself brings to the communities. Once a couple of them realize the health, the environmental, and most importantly to them, the cost in terms of collection of firewood and so forth, savings that they're getting from these improved cook stoves, they will be able to adopt on their own without you having to struggle that much. So basically having nurturing projects, market nurturing projects that give access for private sector companies to go and explore these neglected markets is something that would really increase on the coverage of the improved cook stove industry at large, and then not only concentrating on, for example, the urban areas that I would say have had a lot of interventions. And then finally, and which is the most important, is continuous awareness. Continuous awareness is something that we have seen as Lifeline working for us. If there is brand recognition of what an improved cook stove is actually or it is bringing to the community, yep. Definitely we are going to see a shift happen, or we are already seeing a shift happening at different levels and different markets. And when I talk about awareness, I'm referring to the fact that even these government campaigns, these mass government campaigns, for example, when the president came out and said that we need to stop charcoal burning in northern Uganda. So when this happens, then people are triggered to think of alternatives. What are these alternatives that can be helping our communities? At the end of the day, there are things that you will go without, but you will not go without food, for sure.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rebecca. And thanks to all the panelists. And I think we don't have time. Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, I know a lot could have been shared, but we always have to respect people's time. And I'll just conclude by saying that for a steady and fast-tracked progress, we need to equip the project task teams. And I think that resonates with what some of the panelists have said, plus more. We need robust engagements. We need development partners. We need all the policymakers and implementers come together with the solution, because the solution is there, but it's just how we manage it. And I think that's why this Expo has happened this year. So we also need to equip the practitioners with more knowledge and tools. And this is urgent because it's required to progress on our country's clean cooking adoption methods. I'm not adding so much, but I want to thank everybody for your participation and attendance and listening to us and our panel. You're very, very welcome. And thank you so much for being with us and giving us your precious time. Thank you, everybody, and we close our session this afternoon. A photo, okay. Up here.
Yes. Another round of applause for the panel this afternoon. We'll give them 1 minute to take a photo together before we proceed. So yes, another round of applause again for our panel. Thank you so much, Madam Sophie Kalanzi and the entire team of panelists. That was very informative about the clean cooking industry in Africa. I think there's a lot of good things that are going on there. I must mention before we go to the next session that this session that we have just concluded, our key partner for this session is FAO, which is the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. So we appreciate your contributions and your support to the Renewable Energy Conference 2023. Thank you very much. So ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go straight to our next session. In the program previously there was a break, but I can imagine that it's only been 1 hour since we left lunch. You might want to stand up and stretch, of course, but I propose that you use that 1 minute while I am introducing the next panelists, while I'm introducing the next session to do that, but we are going to go straight into the next session.
I mentioned that there's nothing going on in the room, but now maybe there's a lot of questions. Can we have the panelists? Sorry?
Yeah. Okay. So again, since we didn't have a time for questions for this panel, that's just closed, you will hopefully have time to meet them individually later on. So don't trash your questions, please keep them, and make sure to look out for the individual panelists after the session we are going to start. Okay, so without further ado, we are going to go on to the next session. That's looking about aspects of financing for clean energy transition. Okay, so it's quite a shift from the talk we have had with a clean cooking industry from the technological perspective, but now more looking at what needs to be done to scale financing that accelerates the clean energy transition. And to lead us in this session, please join me to welcome Dr. Frank B. Seboa, the session chair to take us through. Please, a round of applause as Dr. Frank comes to this podium.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will not be like the minister who tried to make you look at a mysterious screen up there. I just say that if you so wish, could you kindly stand up just for me? Until the last person has stood up, we all remain standing. Thank you very much, both of you. Now we can sit down. I think those who know what to do with that time, like this gentleman, have done the little dance to make sure that they're flat. We have a panel here to deal with scaling finance for equitable transition to clean energy. What he didn't tell you is that I'm an engineer, so I know very little about finance. But we are lucky we have somebody in the house who knows quite a lot about finance. And we are going to do this slightly different from the other people. We'll have that person put the perspective correctly for everybody. Then I invite the other panelists to come forward and address particular questions. There are only 3 questions. The other beautiful thing about our session, you heard in the morning a gentleman who said that the session was very male. I think Madam Kalanzi's session has been very feminine or very female. Mine will be a mixture of both. Mine will be a mixture of both, so that we save the boy child as well this evening. The girl child has already been saved. Without wasting more time or without spending more time, I want to ask Mr. Roy Nyamutara Baguma, the Director of Transaction Execution at the Uganda Electricity Capital Credit. He will tell us what it's about. But it's the only government agency charged with doing this, giving money to the sector to improve the electricity supply sector of ours. If you want to use here, please go ahead. If you want to use the other side, as I heard, he has a PowerPoint, which means that I will try also and sit with you. I don't want to try what the minister tried to do like this. You can easily break your neck. Please, Mr. Waguma.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Seboa, thank you for saving the boy child as well in your remarks. I think it's important that we also talk about both the boys and the girls. My name's Roy Nyamutale Baguma again. I work for Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company, and today I will be making a presentation on scaling finance for equitable transition to clean energy. It's there on the screen. I want to take you through a journey of our company. Unfortunately, has it moved? The other one, eh?
Yeah, oh, you're fine.
Okay. I want it, when I press it doesn't. Maybe I should stand there. Why don't I stand there and use, so that it can respond. Sorry about that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Seems to be a problem. Yeah, okay. Okay, that's good. That's better. I couldn't get it from that side. Apologies. We have an outline to this presentation. I think I'll be better vantaged here. We have an outline to this presentation, and the first part of it is to take you through the Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company, the background to its formation, the setup and mandate, the mode of operation, and then the second part of the presentation will talk about the menu of financing programs. We'll talk about previous programs, and we'll talk about a new project which we are implementing called the Electricity Access Scale-Up Project, where Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company is the implementing agency for the financial intermediation component for modern energy access. On the next slide, we're going to take you through the background. And the background is that in 1999, government of Uganda adopted a power sector restructuring privatization strategy. And the main aim of that strategy was to attract investment into the power sector in the areas of generation, distribution, and access. And a key feature of that strategy was to introduce the private sector participation in the industry, and in particular towards existing operations and in the financing and management of future investments. But along the way, as that strategy was being implemented, it was observed that there were barriers, a number of barriers to effective private sector participation. And some of the barriers that were identified were listed there. One of them was lack of project finance or long-term debt in the local market to finance renewable energy projects. The second one was lack of sufficient equity on the part of project developers. Some of our instruments have tried to address this, but that problem still persists, and we are working on a number of mechanisms to address it. There was lack of technical capacity by the local financial institutions to appraise the renewable energy projects. We have done some work on that, and we will tell you more in the presentation. There was lack of transaction advisory services in place, and there was lack of interest by the local financial institutions to finance renewable energy and rural electrification projects. So arising from that background and those barriers and challenges, Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company was established in the wisdom of government to address the financial barriers affecting effective private sector participation in the sector in order to facilitate meeting of government's capital investment goals for private sector-driven electrification projects. And specifically, UECCC was set up as a government institution under the Companies Act, as a company limited by guarantee and not having share capital. And it was operationalized in 2010, primarily to facilitate investments in the renewable energy space, with a particular focus on enabling private sector participation. And so, specifically, the company was set up to administer the Uganda Energy Capitalization Trust, which is a framework for pooling resources from government and development partners, and to channel the same for renewable energy projects and programs. and to work with various partners, including but not limited to development partners and financial institutions, to provide innovative financing options for renewable energy projects directed at reducing real or perceived risks faced by primary lenders and other financial intermediaries. And the other objective was to provide financial, technical, and other support for renewable energy projects in Uganda. So the company provides an institutional framework to facilitate participation of the private sector in the financing of renewable energy projects through use of government's limited public resources to leverage private sector capital. So the idea is to catalyze the private sector, the financial institutions, and the energy service companies to contribute financing, capital, expertise, and other forms of contribution towards increasing access to renewable energy. And so we have a menu of credit support instruments which are offered on business principles to local financial institutions in Uganda to facilitate and or catalyze provision of credit for renewable energy projects and renewable energy solutions. So far, we have partnered with 18 participating financial institutions, 6 regulated commercial banks regulated by the central bank, 6 microfinance institutions, and 6 savings and credit cooperative organizations. This is currently being scaled up under the new project, and we will have many more partners under the Electricity Access Scale-Up project, which I will also talk about in the course of this presentation. So we have the menu now. The first credit support instrument we have in place is a solar loan program. And this program is in place to catalyze financing for end users in order to acquire solar systems for households and institutions. And the objective is to address the affordability barrier posed by the initial upfront cost of acquiring solar systems by end users, including households, small and medium-sized enterprises, and institutions. And at the top there, we have some pictures of beneficiaries. At the top, we have a household in Amuria that benefited from lighting, and the financing was offered by one of our participating financial institutions called Nile Microfinance, based in Arua. And below, we have a lady there reading a Bible and helping her son, keeping company with her son to be able to do homework using solar systems that were supported through our end user program for solar. And we participated through Soroti using Tujijenge Microfinance Limited as one of the participating financial institutions. Then we have the Connection Loan Program, which we developed in 2015. And we developed this because we felt that there was a disconnect. The lines were in place, like on-grid distribution lines were in place, but households and enterprises near those lines were not connected to the grid. And the challenge was the upfront cost associated with the connection costs, utility connection costs, upfront costs associated with wiring of premises, and in some cases there was need for more than one pole, and for some that were using diesel-operated systems, there was need to finance conversion equipment. And so we put together a facility and piloted it in West Nile with Wenreco, the distributor in West Nile. We partnered with Wenreco and Centenary Rural Development Bank. So basically we provided a line of credit to Centenary Rural Development Bank to be able to on-lend to households and enterprises that wanted to connect to the grid, and we were able to address the upfront cost barrier associated with connecting to on-grid electricity. This has been modified a little bit following the coming in of the electricity connection policy in 2017, and under that policy, government provides a free connection for no-pole and single-pole services. And so our facility is now focusing more on supporting wiring, more than one pole service, conversions from diesel-operated systems, and three-phase connections. So that is, and if you visited Centenary Bank and you are able to access the Center Power loan facility, that is a product that we supported, where we supported Centenary Bank to develop that specific product to support financing for on-grid connections. And we have beneficiaries there also in the picture that have benefited from this connection loan program. Then under the Energy for Rural Transformation Project Phase 3, we identified also that there was a challenge faced by solar companies. Solar companies needed to respond to the demand that had been catalyzed through the end user financing, and they needed working capital in order to keep the sustainable flow of equipment. And we put in place a working capital facility for solar companies. And in addition, we also put in place a risk-sharing mechanism because these solar companies face challenges as they try to access working capital from the local financial institutions. They are trading houses and they typically don't have the level of security that the financial institutions are demanding. And under this facility, we have so far disbursed facilities worth 3.2 billion to PFIs in respect of 7 solar companies, and this continues to grow. It is also going to be scaled up under the Electricity Access Scale-Up Project, financial intermediation component, which I will also talk about later in this presentation. We also, similarly, as mentioned, we risk-shared through guarantees, and so far we have extended guarantees worth 600 million to PFIs to on-lend to energy service companies. They are partial guarantees, and they are not 100%, and so we don't want to promote a moral hazard. Another intervention that we have is in the area of clean cooking. We are listening very intently, and we started with a pilot for clean cooking around 2018, and we started with a pilot for biogas financing. And the objective of the program is to address the affordability barrier posed by the upfront costs of acquiring domestic biogas systems for clean cooking and lighting, and also all other clean cooking technologies. So we piloted this in partnership with EBOSACO in the Kato Corridor, and we were also fortunate to get a grant from the Hunan province of China, where we accessed 50 biogas systems for demonstration purposes, and these have been installed in different locations in 18 districts. And the lessons that we were able to learn from the pilot and the demonstrations were used to design a clean cooking financing program under the Electricity Access Scale-Up project. And under the Electricity Access Scale-Up project, we have widened the intervention. It will support clean cook stoves, clean cooking solutions, using various fuels, biogas, solar, liquefied petroleum gas, briquettes, and ethanol. So we also have beneficiaries here. The upper one is a beneficiary supported by EBOSACO, and this one down here is a foundation stone which we put for our demonstration systems. We have in place a technical assistance program, and we continue to raise funding to support various requirements of the sector, renewable energy sector. Some years back, we were in a position to access financing from KfW to support early stage technical assistance for independent power producers. And the reason why we came up with this technical assistance program is that there was a disconnect. We had international investors coming to our offices looking for projects that had been developed or studied with completed feasibility studies. And on the other hand, we also had many local investors coming to our offices requesting for funding to support studies. And so we came up with a package where we could be able to bridge that gap and be able to facilitate support, grant financing support for the development of feasibility studies, so that we could be able to bridge the gap and match make between the local investors and the equity investors that are not prepared to do the greenfield studies but are interested in something that has been studied and that is bankable. And through that program, we were able to support 8 local independent power producers with a generation capacity of 76.7 megawatts. And this enabled the local developers to finish their early stage studies and secure equity investors. As of now, 3 of the 8 are already connected to the grid and are selling power, and we continue to monitor the other 5. We also support financial institutions to develop standalone energy products. In the past, we have supported a number of them. I mentioned that Centenary Bank, we supported Cente Power. We also supported Cente Solar. Finance Trust, we also supported Solar Yange. And we also supported Opportunity Bank. And more recently, we also partnered with Equity Bank, and they have an Equi-Green loan facility, which is not just for solar, but covers the entire renewable energy space, including clean cooking and all other green products. And this way, we are able to pull in the financial institutions to appreciate that financing renewable energy is a viable business, and that also it is an important business to support if we are to be able to address the climate change challenges that the world is facing right now. And then we also support capacity building for independent power producers and financial institutions through the organization of skills transfer events. We also have hitherto obtained support from GIZ to support coaching and linking developers to carbon finance schemes. And the pictures there are showing when we were handing over solar loan product to Post Bank, and this one down here was to Finance Trust Bank, their product Solar Yange. So overall, what are the impacts of our program so far? We have catalyzed financing for renewable energy, and we have enabled 18 local financial institutions to take on renewable energy lending as part of their day-to-day business with standalone renewable energy loan products. We have been able to connect households, small and medium-sized enterprises and institutions. To date, we have facilitated 23,000 solar, biogas, and on-grid connections. And when we use the matrix, we have been able to reach over 1.4 million Ugandans have been enabled to access clean energy through our facilities. Leveraging is still not at the desired levels. It is at 1-to-1 out of the 29.7 billion which we have provided. We have a projected leverage of PFIs at 28.2. We should see that growing because the interest at the financial institution level is also increasing. And it is becoming important for them to support climate financing. The financial institutions also deploy additional resources beyond the credit facilities that include marketing expenses, human resources, their infrastructure such as the branch network, equipment to deliver the renewable energy financing. And UECCC is pleased to partner with the financial institutions to be able to reach the beneficiaries, the ultimate beneficiaries. We mentioned earlier about the projects that we supported for early stage, and out of the 8, 3 have been commissioned and are generating power and supplying to the grid. So now, the next few slides are talking about the electricity access scale-up project. And this is a new project. It became effective in March 2023, so we are a few months already. And the government of Uganda has received funding from the World Bank to the tune of 638 million for the implementation, $638 million for the implementation of the electricity access scale-up project to be implemented over a 5-year period. And the scale-up project will support government of Uganda's efforts to increase access to electricity on-grid and off-grid for households, refugees, and host communities, industrial parks, commercial enterprises, and public institutions. And the project has 2 implementing agencies. The first one with the bulk of the money is the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, which is the implementing agency for the component 1, grid expansion and connectivity. And that component 1 is about $528 million, 528 out of 638. Then component 2, which is the financial intermediation for energy access scale-up project, is implemented by Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company with a ticket size of $110 million. This project also targets energy access both on-grid and off-grid in refugee host communities and 12 refugee host districts have been identified where the facilities will also be available to those host districts and to refugee settlements in particular. The project also supports project implementation support, awareness creation, technical assistance, and also a results-based financing scheme, which I'll also talk about in the next slide. So what is Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company going to do under the Scale-Up project? We will implement the financial intermediation component, and we will do this in partnership with financial institutions and energy service companies. And we intend to scale up provision of financing to households and commercial enterprises for the acquisition of solar home systems and commercial systems. We intend to introduce a wider menu in support for clean cooking solutions, and these are powered by liquefied petroleum gas, solar, ethanol, biogas, and briquettes. We intend to also scale up provision of working capital facilities for solar companies and clean cooking technology companies. In this project, as a new intervention, we are also going to provide price subsidies. Price subsidies to address the affordability constraints associated with acquisition of solar home systems, productive uses of energy equipment, and clean cooking solutions. And we will partner with energy service companies to extend these grants or through price subsidies to the end users, and on confirmation that the grants have been indeed received through price discounts, UECCC will then reimburse the energy service companies after a process of verification. The project will also be able to support, to provide grants to energy service companies in order to encourage these companies to go and reach the hard-to-reach areas. We have mentioned refugee host districts. Doing business in refugee host districts and refugee settlements is not is costly, and also has a number of barriers. We have also noticed that energy service companies also prefer to do their business in the least cost areas in the towns. But this time we want to be able to incentivize these companies to be able to reach the beneficiaries through results-based grants. You deliver a sale in an area outside Kampala and Entebbe, and you can be able to get a grant on a per unit basis for that sale. Then we will also be the grant pass holder to be able to support the procurements of ministries of education, sports, health and water and environment to electrify health centers, schools and rural water pumping schemes. And we will also be the grant pass holder to support the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development to procure suppliers to supply and install clean cooking solutions for public institutions. So under those interventions with the ministries will be responsible for the procurement of suppliers, but UECCC will be the grant pass holder that will disburse against the contract terms that will have been agreed between the ministries and the companies. And we will also, under the project, work closely with key stakeholders, the energy associations, USEA, UNAC, and all other key stakeholders to ensure that we can be able to take the renewable energy space to another level. And this slide basically in a pictorial way explains what we have mentioned about the grants. You have UECCC on the left-hand side. You have the energy service companies in the middle. UECCC will enter a grant agreement with those energy service companies, and these are distributors of solar lighting systems, distributors of productive uses equipment, grain milling equipment, water pumping and irrigation equipment, refrigeration and cooling equipment, and clean cooking solutions. And as they sell, they will sell at a discount to households and enterprises. And once there is a verification process that is done, UECCC will disburse the grants back to the companies within a period of 45 days. And then the solar companies will be, the energy service companies will be expected to provide after-sales service, and UECCC will continue to monitor the performance through a toll-free line with the end users, and also through reporting from the energy service companies. And then on this side here, we are talking about the facilities, the loans. We'll have on the left-hand side, you have UECCC, which will enter into financing agreements with participating financial institutions, including SACCOs, microfinance institutions, banks regulated by Bank of Uganda. We're also going to work with funds and leasing companies. There are some leasing companies that are aggregating demand, and they have a challenge in terms of equipment financing. We want to team up with them so that they can be able to reach our beneficiaries in the rural areas. And those financial institutions will in turn provide working capital loans to solar companies and clean cooking suppliers. They'll also provide end user loans to households and enterprises for house wiring, for productive uses of on-grid electricity, grain milling machines, carpentry workshop tools and other efficient appliances, productive uses of solar energy for commercial purposes, water pumping, irrigation, refrigeration and cooling, water heating, solar grain milling is also there. And we will also support improved cook stoves for private institutions powered by liquefied petroleum gas, ethanol, solar, and biomass. And there will be monitoring and evaluation. The participating financial institutions will expect reports from the loan beneficiaries, working capital loan beneficiaries, and then UECCC will also expect reports from the participating financial institutions. And we will also have a toll-free line for complaints from the beneficiaries in the areas of after-sales service and failure to install some of this equipment properly, especially for the component-based systems for solar. So that is the end of the presentation. I want to thank you very much for listening to me. It has been a little bit long, but you have borne with me. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think that's not adequate. Please give me a thunderous appreciation. Thank you very much, Roy. I think you did a fair job. Now this is where I call my other panelists to take up seats on this podium. There is a gentleman representing Uganda Development Bank. James Otto, are you here? James Otto seems to have stepped out or quit. Then we have another one, the one who will verify whether what Roy told us was true or not is Sam Ochanya. please do come. And to balance things up a bit, we have a lady from Equity Bank. Please do come up. Elizabeth Kasede. Did the Stanbic representative, Mr. Nicholas Kiza, come? Yes, please do come. I'm sorry I didn't recognize you. But then when these lights are looking this way, you can't see the other side. Now we have about 30 minutes according to the program, in which there is now three persons will talk to us. In those few minutes, each of them will tell us about themselves. That's 1 minute. Then they answer 3 questions each. Not my questions, but the questions of the organizers. And the questions go like this. I hope you are listening, and if you have no paper, I'm happy to send you paper. Somebody seems to have abandoned his phone here. Yes, okay. The first question will be, from your experience, how has have your institution's initiatives to support clean energy transition performed? And how have you managed to de-risk those facilities? You have facilities like these people, UECCC, have been telling us they have, but how do they make sure that it is easily accessible to many people? We are looking at equitable access to renewable energy. The second question will be, many private firms often blame financiers for not providing clean energy targeted financing. And all these are in the finance business. How has your entity ensured financing for clean energy access is accessible and affordable for the diverse range of stakeholders? I was reading earlier today that the big solar companies, for instance, we get a lot of money coming into the sector in Uganda, but it goes to the about big 5. The other smaller ones don't get anything. How do you make sure within your entities that we have access for the whole range of stakeholders? Number 3 would be, what would you recommend to be done differently by all actors in the energy space to advance financing of energy transition and initiatives? How do we ensure that everybody is getting this? What should be done differently? I tell you that many years ago in my short life, I was on the board of UECCC. And what we found as board members was that the stringent rules they were applying to banks mainly, because they were mainly financing banks, then to extend this money into the energy sector. Those stringent rules were ensuring that the banks get the money and sit on it, or that the financial institutions don't at all come for the money. Because to own land, when you have so many stringent things, sometimes can be a challenge for a nascent industry. Now, just to save the girl child this time, I think it will be Elizabeth to talk first, because we've been listening to a gentleman. I think it's only fair, isn't it? Elizabeth, our first question, please share your views, the views of Equity Bank, I believe, on this issue.
Okay, thank you so much, moderator, Dr. Frank Seboa. Again, to introduce myself, I'm Elizabeth Mwarinde Kasede. I'm the ED in charge of public sector and social investments. And by virtue of my role, I'm responsible for driving the climate change agenda at the bank. And very excited to be here and happy to work with the Renewable Energy Conference. And I'll join UECCC in appreciating the journey that it has been to get here. I was very excited to see how it all started and where Roy and team have taken. Right now I'm seeing there's more money coming in, there are grants. But back to the question, what is our experience with these initiatives? At first it was really tough, and I agree with you, due to our stringent banking, should I say, regulations. We started out applying a one-size-fits-all, saying that if you come, you want a solar irrigation pump, you are still going to borrow like any other loan, but the cause was not understood at the time. But with the effort of government, UECCC, and so many partners who have come in to de-risk, because as you all know, the renewable energy, what we'd call industry, is very young. I don't know the actual age. I don't know if it's 10 years old. And in your typical banking regulations, the longer you have been in that business, the longer you have experience, the better the risk. So it was important that these de-risking partnerships came in to assist us, because the standard requests would have, you need collateral, we need a long evidence that you've been doing this business for a while, we need to establish that you have a running, you can handle your cash flows. So a lot of the companies that came to participate in renewable energy were failing to meet the eligibility criteria. But I'm happy to note that this has improved. We have developed a special solutions, a product called EquiGreen, where we have partnered with development finance institutions, with the EU, with UECCC, and others who are coming along to support us with liquidity specifically for renewable energy, so that we don't use depositors' funds, which are expensive, to lend, and we use a more affordable rate. At the same time, in terms of collateral, we work out what's possible and what's not possible. With some, if it's mass market or in a group, we can actually provide these kits without collateral, as long as they're within a circle or a group, especially for groups of women and groups of youth. The challenge we have faced, though, is that we need to do some more sensitization, because people want to stay doing things the way they were doing before. I was very happy to see the clean cooking team. We need to do a lot more sensitization, because the products are there, the de-risking opportunities there, but we are not scaling fast enough. So we need to share information on what solutions are there for clean cooking, because people still want to cook the way they have been cooking. So we want to be very active in awareness, because today, as we speak, we have what it takes, but we are not moving fast enough. So that's my answer to question 1. Would you like me to go to question 2?
Yes, please. Okay. As quickly as I can,
okay,
you might not get another.
So I won't belabor the point as well. Again, we are always blamed for not providing the clean energy. So right now, the blame was right, because again, we're following those regulations. But with the new solutions available, we have now started doing, we've reached a level where if in a certain region we can say more than 1,000 solar kits, we measure ourselves. Performance is measured on the number of kits. Change of behavior cannot be seen by smiling and attending conferences. If you've done all these clean cooking stoves, how many stoves have actually gone out? Our friends have come, they have displayed, we know they are briquettes, but if at home I still have charcoal, the briquettes are not working. So we just have to push and measure ourselves over and above the loans measure ourselves on the number of kits that are being utilized, because we know that especially in the micro and in the SMEs, they communicate. If they use something, an equipment well, and it serves them well, and they experience a saving, they talk about it. So we will continue. So our institution, right now, we are actively involved in awareness, and we partner with UECCC. We are always moving around. Equity Bank has decided to come to the forefront, especially on any activities that are related to climate change. We are partnering. We are also trying to combine the message within our other segments, which is micro, the women, and SMEs specifically, which is where our business is really. And that's where we participate. Next move, we're going to go on to radio, TV, especially cascade it within the groups. With our engagements with circles, the circles have reached out to us and said, come, support the supply of the kits. Sometimes we talk about the kits and we say this is a new irrigation pump, but then when we go on a hard sell and try to scale up, the supply is not enough. So that effort is ongoing. That's the answer for number 2. Number 3, what would you recommend that is done differently? I think we should share information. Collaboration is very, very important. We talk about financial literacy all the time. Save your money, don't waste money, this is how you bank. But I think we should blend the, I don't know where to call it, energy literacy. I don't know if that is there. Financial energy literacy. What I'm talking about is we collaborate and send bundled messages so that if you meet those people that we want to do the behavior change, who are my customers, who at the same time are the beneficiaries and at the same time will be the customers of the suppliers of the renewable energy equipment, we should have the same message. Otherwise, we are all running our programs separately. We should just improve on collaboration. That is my main recommendation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I think she deserves a bigger clap than that. I know you missed your afternoon tea, but should show some energy in this thing. Now, Nicholas, a long time ago when I was still the regulator of electricity in this country, Stanbic was the only bank that would look at those mini hydros and other things. Other people, these bankers are very conservative. They say, that's not our area. Then you would say, are you always going to be that? They were happy. By then, the late, I think, Tumsimi Mutebere had not woken up to the reality that banks invest in treasury bills and bonds, and therefore they are not interested in doing traditional things. I want to thank you and thank the madam at the helm that you have a good reputation, at least with me, that you were with us in renewable energy many, many years ago, before some of the people in here had finished nursery school. I thank you. Now, the questions are the same. You may leave the last one for last, but in your experience, and the Stanbic Bank experience is long, how have your institution, how has Stanbic initiatives to support clean energy transition performed, and how have you managed to de-risk those facilities? To me, that's key, because you have the experience.
Thank you very much, Dr. Seboa. And I'll start again by reintroducing myself. My name is Nicholas Kiza. I'm the sector head for energy and infrastructure at Stanbic Bank. It's a business role, and as you hear from its name, the agenda is to increase business in that very specific segment. Energy, meaning power and other forms of energy, including oil and gas, and then the infrastructure space. Dr. Sebo, you just give me 1 minute to say who we are. It's to say that Stanbic is a member of the Standard Bank Group.
we have a strong history with Uganda, dating back to 1912. So as he rightly mentioned, we have been in the market, well experienced, have picked lessons, and would like to believe we have played a positive contribution to the growth of this economy. In answering that question, I'll just quickly give some observations and trends, which will kind of form the background. The first is more around the whole story around clean energy and the Uganda story. One would ask, why does Uganda also have to join that bandwagon, yet a lot of the energy that is being produced is already renewable, when I'm talking about something like hydro. But that is really, I think, for those who are connected to the grid, because 84% of the installed capacity on the grid is from hydro, which in itself is what you'd call clean energy. But that said, there remain some lingering concerns on the energy side related to energy security, and I think still very low levels of penetration across the country. I think electricity penetration is in the region of about 40%. So what does that mean? It calls for continued investments in the energy sector. And where we are in the world right now, that would come in the form of investing in clean energy. With clean energy, also what we have quickly observed is a lot of changes. You have new investors in this field. You have new products, as my fellow panelists were saying, that have come to specifically address concerns in that area. New technologies are also coming all the time. And very importantly for this panel, I think new sources of funding. So you can see that Uganda has not been left behind. We may see a faster pace in Europe, but we are also moving. And where we are, we still have that opportunity to tap into some of those areas. But with the rapid transition towards renewable energy, we need to recognize that it is needed also to avert things like deforestation, emissions, and health risks that are associated with that. Then, in a very general way, I'll say that our role as banks is really complementary to all the efforts of government and some of the institutions, so that the country achieves its objectives in this regard. As Stanbic Bank, talking about our performance, first of all, where are we intervening? I think we intervene across the full spectrum of options for participating in this space. Off-grid solar projects, commercial and industrial applications, meaning when you see things like rooftop solar and solar installations and other sort of setups to power commercial buildings and businesses. Then we also go as far as large industrial applications, meaning users who have requirements in excess of 10 megawatts on one site, like steel companies, cement companies, and so forth. And in these cases, you'd find models like for captive power, where the energy generation is at source and is used directly by an off-taker right there. It can be either by a company itself, or the company can buy from someone who's specialized in developing and selling to them through power purchase agreements. But then we also go as far as residential solar applications, solar home systems. Now, how have we performed? The simple answer is that I think a lot more can be done. Government has done quite a lot in terms of policy, incentives, on renewable energy, but much more can still be done, especially in the space of heavy intensive users. So I think we need to see people taking more advantage of some of those incentives, and also see a shift by some of these users to move to some of these cleaner energy technologies. Then also another area where maybe we need to improve. We've put in place certain products almost similar to what you had with equity. We have done partnerships with some multilaterals, I think notably the likes of SIDA. We are actually also having an active conversation with UECCC to see how we can do a lot more in terms of coming up with risk mitigation instruments and models that both lower cost but also lower the risk of investment in renewable energy. So there's a need to scale up because some of the products are there, but they have not been really scaled to the point where we can knock on more doors and say that based on the knowledge and our actual observation, there's a need. Then also looking at the larger energy requirements. I think, as Dr. Sebo was saying, very early on we played a very active part, but the world did not sleep and people moved very quickly. Right now, for the feasible projects for like mini hydros and those investments in solar off-grid options, what you're finding is increasingly there's less participation by the commercial banks, and there's a new crop of specialized lenders that are playing in that space. So you're seeing energy funds, social impact investors, and what advantage do they have over us? And I think usually it comes down to things like the lending rates and such conditions. So there's still a bit of work because even when we try to come up with risk mitigation instruments, I think the perception is that the rates are still quite high. Already when you look at the central bank rate, which is really the standard reference, and you're in double digits, I think investors are put off by these rates. Then I think I'll also say that for the large-scale energy transition projects, we're currently at a point where there's a bit of a pause because of the policy in place by government. What do I mean? More recently, of course, they scrapped or put on hold the certain clauses around take or pay in the power purchase agreements. And what does that mean? It means that people who wanted to invest in this space are unable to demonstrate to us the bankability of such projects. Because we as banks want to know that you have some sort of certainty in terms of repayment. And if you don't have a take or pay, then you are left to market forces and selling yourself, which might not be very, very easy. So in that regard, I think it's really to say, with those observations, we can still do a lot more. Then maybe just what we have done to ensure we carry everyone along with us. As Stanbic, which is a member of Standard Bank Group, there are a couple of things we have done. I think the notable thing is, first of all, declaring our commitment to net zero in terms of our footprint and portfolio by 2050. That's a very strong statement of intent. We put in place a climate policy, not only to address the risks related to climate change, but also to drive the agenda around supporting renewable projects. And then we also put in place a sustainability strategy, which at its heart also endeavors to ensure that renewable energy is an agenda that we are driving very actively in this market. So we have done something similar to Equity Bank. We have put in place a very specific products for people who are investing in renewables and also in energy efficiency. Then we have a very clear risk appetite that has been defined that allows you to extend your tenors, but also wants to give you the benefit in terms of that rate, which, as I mentioned, we're still working on to try and even enhance better so that it's closer to some of the other kinds of investors I mentioned. Another way we are also making sure that we keep everyone going is that building that in-house expertise so that I can differentiate from person X or Y, person who has a normal project, but one that, say, is a renewable project or energy efficient project. How do I give him the benefit of saying that we have the expertise to say that with such a positive initiative which is aligned to our own strategic goals, we can work with you and we shall work together to get a solution. And then very importantly, I think the continued collaboration in this space is important with DFIs, multilaterals, the other energy funds, government of Uganda through its various agencies, including the Ministry of Energy, and it's to collaborate with them and see why can't I be a participating financial institution with UECCC and any like-minded institutions so that we can give that benefit to people who are investing in this field. Dr. Seboa, the last part would really be to just tell you what I think can be done differently. I can do it now, or I can wait.
Save that for last, where it will be sweeter. But before I go to him, I want to give opportunity to our colleague who seems to be missing. James Otto, are you somewhere in this hall? We are missing the benefit of listening to our only development bank, because really, although we are looking at it as a business, we are still in the development phase. And I would have loved to hear from the development bank how we would move forward, but that will be for another day. Now, Nicholas, I'm not going to leave you alone, because you mentioned a few things I used to love a lot, now I hate. The thing called take or pay. Take or pay was there to build the baby. Now this baby is walking. All right, he's not running. Why should he need take or pay? This is the business risk the investor must take, and his banker must analyze and say, yes, we are not a winner. But if you make it take or pay, an investor will come here and be lazy. So will the bankers. They won't keep tabs on him to make sure that he's doing the right thing. I hope you will comment on that. But for me, take or pay now I don't like. It's like those, you remember some of you who are older, we used to have sovereign guarantees for all sorts of projects until late Keith Muhakani's said, enough is enough. If these people don't trust us, forget it. And they kept coming even after it was removed. You will see that without take or pay, projects will still continue, because the Ugandan market in energy is either sweet. I honestly believe it is sweet. You don't believe me? Ask an investor who has bought shares in Umeme. I think it's very sweet. It gives dividends all the time. So it's time they took on the risks of the business. Having said that, the other thing where maybe I won't leave you alone, when new things come, banks have a way of handling them. There was a time when you were the bosses of money. The times changed. Then there was a time when I had to come to your bank. Mobile money came. You've adopted. I want you to adopt even in the energy sector. It's a new sector, but you could adopt. Now, Roy, it's time now to see whether you told us the truth or not. I don't know which of the two is the boss, but we are now going to ask Mr. Ochanya to also give us his thoughts from the docket he holds in UECCC. Yes, please. You had the questions, or do I repeat any of them? Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Can you introduce a bit more of yourself?
Yes. Samuel Ochanya is my name, the project manager of EASP, that is the Electricity Access Scale-Up Project. You forgive me, I keep clearing my voice, just recovering, but it's not COVID, so don't worry. So it's a pleasure to speak about what UECCC is doing to address the challenges that you have raised, Dr. Seboa. We sit in a very unique place as UECCC. We are here to do financial intermediation as a government entity or an entity that belongs to Ugandans. But we are playing in a space that commercial entities like the commercial banks are playing in. So we have got to approach whatever we do with some kind of deliberate, with a very deliberate approach. Because once you annoy Stanbic or you annoy Equity Bank, I don't know if you can survive in this country. So anyway, as UCCC, what we are doing to address the challenges have really been laid forth by Roy in the previous presentation, but I'll just delve slightly more into the detail. So we've got instruments that we have deployed to ensure that there's adoption of renewable energy and that it is done in a sustainable manner. And we largely term this as the credit support facility that we have put out. The credit support facility is one that we are making available to financial institutions. Unfortunately, Equity Bank and Stanbic Bank are part of the institutions that have expressed interest to partner with us in this project. And this credit support facility has got different mechanisms of delivery. We'll be able to provide financial institutions with lines of credit as such that they are able to on-lend to their customers, whether they be energy service companies or there will be individuals who would like to acquire some of the improved technologies. So the technologies that we are looking at under this project would be the clean cooking solutions. We saw that the ladies, the panel before us, which was extremely biased towards the ladies, was speaking about clean cooking solutions. That is one of the things that we shall really be driving. We'll be looking at things like LPG, we shall be looking at ethanol, we shall be looking at, we've got electronic pressure cookers and all these clean cooking solutions that we are speaking about. So we'll be providing lines of credit to financial institutions to enable that. What we are doing in doing this is providing this funding at lower than market rate to these financial institutions. I think for commercial banks, we are playing in a space of not more than 8%, I think, but something in that range. And we also believe that even them, as they lend on to the end beneficiary, they just put a small markup to take care of whether they're going to be administrative costs, something small that could enable them, you know, make it financially viable or a business viable. So we are providing lines of credit financial institutions, but also uniquely to de-risk, we are doing some kind of partial credit guarantees that shall be available, such that even as Liz and Nicholas here are going to lend out to these companies, they can do it with a certain degree of comfort that they would not have ordinarily done as they are assessing the businesses that have expressed interest in borrowing. That is one side of de-risking. We are also going to be able to provide technology risk guarantees such that anytime these energy companies are coming with technologies that they're not particularly familiar with or on the cutting edge of things, and you know, you feel it's a bit risky, when you know that UCCC is providing some kind of backing for areas of failure of technologies, then you can be able to be more, your risk appetite will be more accommodative to support these energy companies, because I mean, people who are at the forefront of adopting usually make greater strides faster than those who will adopt technologies at a later stage. So that is part of what UCCC is doing by providing some of these guarantees to ensure that the financial institutions and the banks, and the energy service companies are able to do a lot more than they ordinarily would have been able to. This time round under the project, UCCC is going to do some direct lending. Direct lending meaning we are going to now enter the lending space as well. And what informed that is, you know, despite all the stopgap measures that you have put in place to ensure that the banks are able to lend to the companies or individuals that express interest, there might be those who the financial institutions think we still can't lend to these people. But within our mandate, we have got the capacity, of course, the funding, to be able to do some direct lending. But in doing it, like I mentioned, we are not here to distort the industry, because again, that is that could potentially be a systemic problem. But we'll work with the financial institutions. So I would extend an invitation, actually, right now to the big banks that if there are those who might be interested in facilities from you, and you feel that the cake is too big, it's $5 million, and you have appetite for 3, you come and we see how we can be able to syndicate these facilities and then provide funding to the players in the sector such that we are able to achieve the electrification targets that we want to achieve as a country. The other thing that I would like to speak about is we mentioned about the subsidies that we are going to bring on board. We are going to do this results-based financing program for the duration of the project. But we believe that once Ugandans have started to adopt these technologies, the off-grid solar systems, the clean cooking solutions, we believe that by the time the subsidy program comes to an end, it will be so popular that no one wants to go back to the older technologies, whether it's going to be using the charcoal, like it has been common, or firewood. People will now be on LPG, people will be on ethanol, people will be on electronic pressure cookers. People will be, have adopted many of the other productive uses that we can, that are available under the project. So I think as UECCC, we are very committed to make sure that the transition into clean energy, renewable energy sources is fast-tracked. I will just give a quick update to the wider public such that by the time you go back, you are aware of how far we have gone with the project. We put out a call for financial institutions to partner with us, I think in September, and also for energy companies to partner with us, or to partner with the financial institutions. And we received some very good responses. About nearly 90 energy service companies expressed interest. We are going through a process of evaluating the expressions. We received nearly 40 financial institutions expressing interest to participate, SACCOs, those different tier 4 and tier 1 and 2 and 3 financial institutions. So we are really gearing up to make sure that this project is a success, and we shall really be happy if the Ugandans took up the opportunity. It's a very big, it's a lot of money, and it can only be utilized to serve the Ugandans, many of whom are here listening.
Thank you very much. I think you should have more confidence in your government next time you talk to your government, because they've put all these facilities in UECCC for you to take up. Don't say the money is not there. The money is there. Maybe what is not there could be close to where my hand is now. But 1 minute each, and we are now over time. 1 minute each to say, to try and comment on that last question of what can be done differently. I know, Elizabeth, you tried to cover it, but you may have come up with another thought. A quick one, 1 minute, then 1 minute for Nicholas, and finally Samuel here.
Thank you once again, and very excited to hear about the new funding opportunities from UECCC and the collaboration opportunity. Whereas I'd also mentioned it as some of the things we recommend. I could maybe add that we need to do a lot more than talk, because the climate change is actually real. I don't know whether we will do it like how the churches and the mosques, the religious institutions, they have the same message every week, every Friday for the Muslims, every Sunday for the Christians. But the conversion, even after all these years, is still not the right percentage. But if you look at the message of climate change, I think we need to do a lot more so that it's not so much a push. We're not pushing the renewable agenda towards our people, but let it be attractive so that we can get to the scale that we want to see. As I said earlier, the funds are now here. We don't really have much of an excuse. All we have to do is structure the plan and actually get the equipment that we have in here. I think we should also reduce on the length of our processes when it comes to documentation. I think it's a culture of having long documentation processes. Let's shorten that across so that we can actually get the ball rolling. That's my simple recommendation. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you very much. Nicholas, please.
Thank you, Dr. Seboa. Try not to repeat what Lisa said, but to wrap it, it's just to say that I think there has to be more effective sharing of information on clean energy transition financing products by commercial banks and their partners. I think the presentation by UACCC today has really been very enlightening, and that information has to reach out there to people in terms of what is available. Then I would also say that there's need to strengthen ESG practices at corporate level with an emphasis on emissions, clean energy, energy efficiency, and resource management, so that that culture is driven at that point, and they are also driven to invest in this space. Then, of course, given that this session is all about financing, it's just that for us financial institutions, whether commercial banks and development banks, we really need to continue to explore product development, where we come up with a good mix of concessional liquidity and other risk-sharing instruments, so that these projects can be taken over the line. Those are my parting shots, Dr. Seboa.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Yes. Thank you. I think my parting remarks would be just to see that, you know, as we encourage Ugandans to adopt these clean energy technologies, is to make sure that those who are involved in the value chain for whether it is going to be on the supply side, whether it's going to be on the intermediary side, or on the demand side, is to make sure that besides the quantity, we are also dealing with the quality of whatever is being done. I think this has largely been informed by, you may not be aware, I saw there's an exhibition somewhere in the corner there. You may want to have a look and see what the photographs there are showing. A lot of what we are driving off-grid, it is important to see how it is actually being delivered, and whether it is to the quality, the degree of expected installations, you know, to make sure that what we are doing right now that we are driving does not become a problem for us in the future. So I think, Doctor, on my part, we can just try to be very responsible as we are delivering on the different targets and numbers that we hope to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Roy, I'm certain that you don't want to miss the last minute. You are the head of this panel. So 1 minute of comment. Yes. He's in charge of execution of these projects at UECCC.
We just want to say that on this occasion, we are doing a number of things. We are de-risking through partial risk guarantees. There is also a technology risk guarantee. We are also making the clean technologies more affordable through discounts, price discounts given by government, ranging from 40% to 60% of the price. So the energy service companies should be able to come on board. And the banks should also be able to support, because now you have assured cash flows. Once these companies are selling, then you are sure that you will receive the grants. You can ring fence those grants from UECCC. So the environment has really improved, both from a supply side and a demand side arrangement, and we should see the sector growing to another level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roy. I can say that he was telling the photographer to get ready, so Roy, don't go away. Perhaps there is going to be a photograph here. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I think this has been a great occasion for all of us to listen to the financing that is available in the sector. I assure you, this has tended more to go to what government has put in place. But there is also private financing, and those private equity arrangements in some of the circles, some of the investment clubs as well. All of these are available to give you finance, to escalate or to scale up the financing that will enable our transition to clean energy. With that, I want to thank you for your attention, for listening to us patiently, and for allowing us to overrun by almost 10 minutes from where we are supposed to have stopped. Thank you very much. Thank you indeed. A grand clap for the panel who has done a great job. Yes, sir, session manager, we are done as far as I'm concerned. Can we go there for a photograph? Provided I'm allowed to stand next to the lady. Eh? Yes, indeed.
Another big round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much, Dr. Frank Seboa, and the entire team of panelists and the speaker as well. Thank you for the very insightful discussions. But also thank you very much, our dear participants and delegates. You have been a very good audience, and I hope that you have learned a lot, and that you have picked up some ideas that you might want to follow up on later on individually with the participants, with the panelists, sorry. I think with this session we have come to the end of the formal sessions in this particular hall. It might be that in one or two of the other halls downstairs, there's a session that's still ongoing. And if you want to join any, you may run downstairs quickly and check if they are still on. But for today and in this hall, we have come to a close of the sessions. And I think we have had a very successful day today. And that's all because of you. Thank you for turning up. And thank you for being good delegates. Today has been successful, but I think tomorrow will even be much better. So I hope to see all of you back here tomorrow. And our first session will start by 8:30 a.m. And tomorrow we'll start with different sessions in different halls. Okay, so please plan to be here to engage, to learn, but also to network. Now lastly, before I leave the podium, I hope you'll find this interesting. There is a cocktail that has been arranged for today, for this evening. So when you leave, and if you're not interested in joining any of the other sessions, there's a cocktail right at the swimming pool there, so you can go and join that. Please make sure to network, but also to visit the stores in the exhibition area if you have not yet visited those. With those words, please allow me to wish you a fruitful networking and a very good evening. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Smart 24, driving business.